Hello again, and welcome to the Unfuck My Life Experiment podcast.
What's up?
So this podcast is where we explore the question, what would happen if you took radical personal responsibility for your life for 365 days? I'm Beki Dunmeyer, and this is Cheryl Ellis with the Faceless Warrior Project. What's up, what's up?
What's up?
I am excited because this is, we've been doing this for enough time that we kind of have like a rhythm going down here, and I'm excited for the topic that we're going to talk about today. So are you ready for it?
I'm ready for it. Hit me with it. Let's go.
All right. So I am a Pinterest addict, and it's okay because it's helpful. There are a lot of good things on Pinterest, and if you're not on Pinterest, you should check out the Unfuck My Life Experiment on Pinterest, because we're going to be sharing a lot of good things because I have to have a reason to be on there. Anyway.
You just admitted that you have an addiction and went, but it's okay.
It is okay. You want to know why? You want to know why it's okay?
Why?
Because I'm confronting something.
Are you
that
now?
Possibly needs to change. No, it is okay.
Are we going to get into that?
Actual addiction. But let me talk about the subject.
Okay. All right. Do your thing. Get into
that
everything in moderation. We'll get there.
We'll get there. All of that to say, I came across a quote that really kind of summarizes the first step when it comes to unfucking your life. And that quote was, "You can't change what you refuse to confront." Right? So in order for you to unfuck your life, you first have to acknowledge that your life is fucked.
Fucked. I don't think that's hard to see in 2020.
It isn't hard to see in a lot of areas, but I think bringing it back to I am the problem in my life, like.
But you, my dear, are also the solution.
Exactly. But in order to be the solution, you have to realize that you are the problem.
True story.
So as long as you think that somebody else or something else or any kind of external thing is the problem, then you can't be the solution for that, because you can't change.
Denial.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go with the addiction rhetoric. All right, this will be a good time today. Let's do the thing.
So the reason why my Pinterest addiction is not a problem is because we're going to get into the addiction language. I can stop anytime I want to. I just don't want to.
Oh, back that one up. You're pushing some envelopes there that may get questionable. You're pushing some questionable envelopes there.
That was sarcastic. Okay, that's not really why it's not a problem. Like it's not a problem because I literally don't have an addiction. I just call it an addiction. I like it a lot, but I can also go without it. So
I mean, to be perfectly honest, you could get down that route with the many other things that a lot of people in this world call themselves addicted to. Healthy things, working out, exercising, fitness, diet obsession. These are all healthy things. They're good for your body. But when you focus too much on any one thing, it becomes an obsession, not necessarily an addiction. And that obsession leads to compulsive behaviors, which then are toxic. So.
Right. Which is they're all fair and valid points. And I think that would be a good show to do at some point. But I think we've kind of gotten off topic from my slip of the tongue in calling it an addiction.
Sorry.
No, it's all good.
It's a trigger word.
Yeah. And it does need to be, it will be good to have that conversation. I definitely do want to have that conversation. But today I do want to talk about more of the denial of it either being, when you see problems in your life, either insisting that they are due to some external cause, or just denying that you have a problem altogether. and saying, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. It must be everybody else that has the problem. I'm perfectly okay. And as long as you're doing that, you're not in a place where you can see the things that you need to work on and therefore be able to heal. So it just winds up being a problem. It's kind of like that meme with the dog in the house and it's on fire, but he's just like drinking coffee, like, this is okay. Everything's okay. Like, that's kind of the image that it brings to mind a lot with what's going on even in 2020, because in 2020, more than any other year, the easy route is to say the world is just fucked right now. Right. And I'm doing my best, which there is some validity in that. However, how you are responding or reacting to the things that are unfolding in 2020 is going to determine how the rest of your 2020 goes, and also how your 2021 goes.
Yeah, I mean, last weekend I had the awesome privilege to be in Washington, D.C., and being there, I took the opportunity to go see the Martin Luther King monument. I'd never seen it before, and the power of it literally brought me to tears. But one of the quotes that's engraved on the wall there, I'm going to paraphrase it and probably ruin it, but I'll get the crux of it. And what he was trying to say is that when you're in conflict, it reveals the true nature of your character. So, yeah, these moments of conflict should be, for people who are introspective, bringing up the areas where you need to improve. Where do you need to get better? Where do you need to get stronger? What areas did you run? Where did you hide? Where did you put your head in the sand and not want to look at that? Perhaps maybe some of the struggles in your life are the result of the fact that your side of the street wasn't clean. So the people that really had their act together were able to pivot in 2020 repeatedly, over and over and over again. With each wave that came in, they were able to pivot, adjust, and make the responses, give the responses to the situation that allowed them to stay in a decent position. But the people whose side of the street was a little bit of a mess, maybe they didn't fare as well.
See, and I would even disagree a little bit with people that had it all together, because I think there are a lot of people who this caught them completely unexpected and they didn't necessarily have a plan. They weren't prepared for this, but they were able to look at it, and instead of freaking out and being, oh, this is going to ruin me, what am I going to do now? I don't know how I'm going to survive. Or they looked at it and they said, okay, how do I handle this now that this is a thing? How do I make a plan to deal with this? And it's the people that were able to identify that this was going to be an issue for them.
And those are the people that have a resilience.
Yeah.
They have a resilience, which, let's be honest, that's not about being tough. That's not about having grit. That's just having the ability to rebound quickly. That's what resilience is about, is the ability to recover quickly. And the people that were resilient are the ones that have fared well. Now, that doesn't, it happened in places where you wouldn't expect it. Saying that the person was resilient or fared well through this whole situation isn't necessarily a reflection on what you would see on the outside. That's the person that's done the inner work to say, I'm okay. It's the inner work that really showed through in the people that you in everybody in the world in 2020. I think resilience was really the one asset that people had who fared well that typically you can't see.
Well, I think one thing that 2020 has shown people is whether they can even see that they lack resilience or they need to build their resilience to situations, because some people, when shown a lack of their resilience,
it's the world's fault.
Right. And other people are like, oh shit, maybe I need to get some stuff together and figure out how to get more resilient. So I think I think the quote, it may not be the exact quote, but I think that the quote that you were looking for Martin Luther King was, our circumstances did not define a man's character, they simply reveal it to himself.
That wasn't the exact quote, but that's the root of it. And I
There's-
believe that is something that he said. So.
Yeah, there is a quote that says, you know, our circumstances don't define our character, they just reveal it.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what we've been getting in 2020 is opportunities to see what our characters are made of. And, you know, I have to say, for me, I was found lacking for myself. Like, there were some things where I thought I was more resilient than I was, and I kind of fell apart. But it's also looking at those things and not taking them to a place where it defeats you. The lack of having something defeats you.
Yeah.
And instead looking at that as an opportunity.
Stirring desire to
grow.
improve.
Like, okay, I didn't do great on that. That's okay. If I start doing X, Y, Z on a regular basis, I'm going to get better at it.
Yeah. Marissa Peer says, she tells a story about her daughter taking the national exams that they have to take in school there. And her daughter came home one day completely upset because apparently in the UK it's a thing. I don't know. I don't live there. But apparently it's a thing that they take a practice exam before they take the actual exams. And she came home distraught because she hadn't done well. And Marissa Pierce puts this in such a great way, man. Just the reframe and her redirects are exceptional. She looked at her daughter and went, you should be happy that you didn't do well. And her daughter was stunned by that response. What do you mean, be happy? She says, that's revealing to you the areas where you need to improve. That's going to make you push harder and study harder. So when the real test comes, you're prepared. So sure enough, her daughter went back to take the real exams after improving on the areas where she showed need and did better than the majority of her friends who had done well on the practice exam and didn't bother to continue to study. Right. So it says so much about the nature of how you view your challenges in your life. Are you viewing it as a challenge, or are you viewing it as a failure? Yeah. This has been an awesome year for really taking self examination and seeing what areas in your life you need to improve.
And that's not to say that you are immediately like, ooh, this is fucked. Yay, I get to grow. Like, you're not always immediately optimistic. You're not even eventually optimistic sometimes. But in saying, okay, this is a thing, I'm going to be bummed out about it for like a day, and then I'll figure out a plan and we'll go from there. And you can still experience the whole range of human emotion. You can be frustrated, you can be pissed off, you can be sad, you can be angry, you can be overjoyed, you know, you can be excited, you can be motivated, you can be all of these things about the same topic, and it's all okay as long as you are making progress forward in some way. And sometimes we need to express frustration in order to be able to move past that frustration and not have that be a sticking point of, you know, some of us are like super, I come from a place where I was super critical of myself. My inner voice was a raging bitch, like just the meanest person ever in my entire life was in my head. And so instead of taking my failures and using them to beat me down into complete depression and inaction, I was like, okay, not today. You can hush up for a minute. I'm going to be mad about this and I would set a time limit. I'm like, I'm going to take a couple of hours. I'm going to be real mad about this. I'm not going to feel any guilt about how mad I am about this. I'm going to be real mad. I'm going to say what I want to say. I'm going to go on a drive and cuss out the entire world as loud.
We had one of those moments at 8 a.m. this morning,
right.
You and I.
Right?
We had one of those moments today.
I'm going to get it out, because when I get it out, then I can let go of that, and I can come back and I can center my thoughts, and I can figure out how to not repeat that or how to do it better next time. I can figure out a way to move forward, right?
The other thing is, if you want to get into trauma studies, and this is one of the things that we cover extensively on the Faceless Warrior Project, is what trauma does to your body.
Right.
And when you don't allow yourself the room to process these things, when you don't acknowledge that you're there, these are literal energetic sticking points that get trapped cellularly in your body, and it
turns
stays
into a
there.
physiological problem.
It stays there until your body finally puts you in a position where you have no choice but to address it. So it's easier. It's so much easier when you reach that point of awareness where you say, I'm going through something. Let me get to the root of what this is actually about. And you can look at that thing in the face, address it, change it, do whatever you have to do, cry about it, scream about it, let it out and release it, transmute it, and grow from it.
Yeah.
When you reach that point, everything becomes easier. And one other thing that I want to go back to, if you're okay with it, you mentioned something about that sticking point, that you reach so often you reach that point in frustration in your growth where you just want to throw your hands up and quit because things just got hard. That's the point. That is the point where you are ready to transition. It's that moment. I think we were talking about the growth pattern of a mystic, how you start as the novice, you become an apprentice, and during that apprentice period, at some point you're going to have that moment where your faith is challenged. And you begin to question everything. Is this even real? And that actually applies to just about anything you do in your life. Is this the right thing for me? Is whatever I'm building, is this the right goal for me? It's so hard. Is this not meant for me? Am I doing the wrong thing? And in that moment, you have a choice to either press through and become the adept or quit and have to come back at that same point to something else in your world. So many people in this world hit that point, that sticking point where they're being challenged and they're questioning the reason why they're doing it, and they just give up, forget it. It's not meant for me. You might as well stay asleep. Why'd you try in the first place?
Well, it's mastery of anything, really.
Yes.
You have to go through the beginning and the apprenticeship stage. The apprenticeship stage is so you can make all those mistakes, you can learn the lessons, and you can master the craft that you're trying to master. You can master that thing. The way you know if you have mastered it is if you can get over those sticking points.
Right.
So you're gonna, it's, in the spiritual world, they call it repeating the cycle. In sports, it's like try and try again. You're going to run this drill 1,000 times until you get it. Right.
And then it becomes muscle memory. Right.
Yeah. Then it becomes muscle memory. Then it becomes, a new neural pathway in your brain.
Exactly.
And that's the whole point. But you have to repeatedly go through it to change it, to get over that sticking point. And then, but in order to do that, you have to first acknowledge that sticking point is all you.
It's all you.
That's all you. Like, it may show up as different places and people's. It may show up as all your friendships wind up ending the same way, or all of your relationships wind up ending the same way, or you can't get past a certain point in business. It can show up in a million different ways, but the lesson is the same. And so you have to look at how you're contributing to that being a sticking point, and not just saying, well, I guess I'm shit, I'm never going to get over this. That's giving up. That's really a cop out.
That's right. And guess what? When you cop out like that, guess what happens?
Repeat.
The universe finds a really nice, creative way to put you in that situation again and spank you until you get it right.
It gives you all the opportunity you need to unfuck yourself. Now, how many opportunities you're going to have depends on how quickly you're willing to admit that you are the crux of the problem.
And then exhibit that resilience. And rebound.
You can make different choices. Essentially, when you're repeating a cycle, it's because you're making choices that aren't beneficial to you, you know, or that seem beneficial short term but aren't beneficial long term. So you have to actually do, I mean, this is introspection. This is where, you know, journaling or even just habit tracking can give you some kind of insight that you may not otherwise get into what the problem is. There's a lot of different ways that you can pinpoint the pattern that leads to this sticking point. So I would recommend, I just recommend this anyway, is journaling and habit tracking.
Absolutely. Become the scientist of your own life.
Absolutely.
Start collecting the data.
Turn it into an experiment, because when you have, there's this saying, what gets measured can improve.
That's alchemy right there, right?
It's alchemy. It's science. It's in anything. You have to know the baseline. You have to know where you're starting from. You have to know what the patterns are, the criteria, the variables. You have to know all of this data in order to be able to evaluate thoroughly what the issue is, and say, because sometimes it may seem like a similar sticking point, but really the lesson that you need to learn is not to solve that problem, but to remove yourself from that problem, so it's not a problem for you. So the solutions look different depending on what that sticking point is. It's not always something that you need to conquer. Sometimes it's, you need to have wisdom to say, this is not a fight that's worth it. This is not, this chaos is not worth keeping in my life. There is something else that is better for me, right?
When we were talking this morning, you and I, we were talking about how when you hit that wall of depression and when you're in that depressed mode, you don't want to journal. And I may have mentioned this on this show before, but I was listening to Tim Ferriss. He had Matthew McConaughey on as a guest, and their entire conversation, 2-hour conversation, was centered around Matthew McConaughey's journals. And Matthew says, listen, those are the moments when you need to be journaling most, because those are the moments where you're revealing all of your ugly stuff. And what you need to do in those ugly moments is go and look what you were doing when things were good and start replicating that. And then be able in the good times to look back on the really crap times and know how you fell into that cycle to prevent yourself from going there again. It really is wholeheartedly about becoming the scientist and the designer, the architect of your own life.
It's really important, I think, to not censor yourselves. I think that some people journal as if somebody else were going to read it at some point, and they don't want to be judged, so they still censor their thoughts and their feelings.
Keep 2 journals, and that's what I used to do. I used to keep my black book journal for my stepmom to read, and then I would have my real journal hidden somewhere else.
Well, and I mean, we're not children anymore either, are we? So
you know what I'm getting at, though.
Yeah, I do. But at the same time, like, just give yourself permission to be a full out human without the judgment that, like, feel the emotion without judging it. So if you're depressed, write out all your depressed shit. That's fine. But don't judge it. Don't be like, oh, I'm such a terrible person for being depressed. And this is, you know, if I were stronger, I wouldn't, you know, like, there's all these external societal and cultural judgments that we put on shit unnecessarily, when this is not about all of that. You're not putting on a performance for anybody else. This is not work that anybody else is going to review. Mm-hmm. This is just for you. So if there's any place that you can be 100% honest with shit, do it in your journal. Or at least do it in some way where you can express yourself fully, because that's part of the problem too. I mean, that's when you were talking about, you know, energy getting trapped or trauma getting trapped. That's part of it too, is if you don't fully express what you're actually feeling in the full raw authenticity of what it is, there's a little piece of it that's going to be stuck. It's going to, and then you internalize it, and that turns into a problem. So you have to be able to, you have to be willing to confront all of it as it is without judgment. And it may be terrible. It may not be something that you want to know anything about, but you have to be willing to express it. You have to be willing to dump it out and see what's in there in order for you to then go, okay, well, this is absolutely not true. This, maybe that's kind of true. That's an area where I could work on. And then you can go back with a cooler head, you know, and pick it apart. You can analyze later. But when you're writing it out, be in creation mode. Don't be in editing mode. Just be in creation, full on creation mode. A good way to do this, honestly, is to open up a blank document or have a piece of paper and just write, but don't really look at what you're writing. If you make grammatical errors, if you make spelling errors, if it doesn't make sense, that's fine. Just do kind of a brain dump. Just let it out. And then if you want to go back and look at it, you can. If you don't, okay, don't. At least it's out. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things you're going to discover as you start to dump like that too is the true nature, the core of that voice that's inside of you. And just like the Marissa Peer story, just like that story, and like the Stoics say, what you learn to do is rewrite the narrative that you have around the situation, because the situation and the feeling and the emotion only is what you say it is.
Yeah.
The power that it holds is only in the narrative that you tell yourself. So what you learn to do, the more practice that you get at putting it down, putting it out there, seeing what your rhetoric is, what voice are you, what story are you telling yourself? What you learn to do is step away from that story, look at it from another perspective and start to go, is that even true?
Yeah.
Is that even true? And why not just shift that a little bit so maybe I can look at it this way and make the situation work for me instead of against me?
Right. Or when it is true, and say, okay, given that this is true, how do I work with that? How do I make this smoother in conjunction with this other thing? You know, like you have to see what's there in order to see what is and what isn't, and then you can determine what needs to be. Like simplifying it.
That's power right there. That's power right there.
That's really what it boils down to. So,
don't be the dog watching the house burn down. Can for the love of God, can you just take your coffee and pour it on the house? Put the fire out.
I mean, this is something that in my own personal life, it has led to life-altering decisions for me, because if you're in a situation, in a friendship or a relationship or anything where one person is willing to look at their shit and work on it and the other person is not, that situation is not going to work out. It doesn't matter how much counseling or how much late night talks you have or any of that kind of thing. If
you've reached the point where you have outgrown that person,
if both people aren't willing to look at themselves as individuals and say, okay, here's how I can improve and here's how we can improve together, it's not going to work if only one side is doing that and the other side isn't.
That's right. So, then you end up in a rowboat where one person's paddling and the other person is not. All you're going to do is spin in circles, dog. Get off the merry-go-round. Let it go.
At some point, you got to jump out the fucking boat.
No, push them out the boat and row yourself. Because fuck that shit. I don't want to get wet.
That's not what she said. All right.
Touche.
So I think that's good for this episode. As always, if you want to find out more about what either of us are doing, you can check the description box.
If you like what you heard, share it.
Share it. If you want to hear more of it, subscribe and turn on those notifications. And if you want us in your box, then go to the unfuckmylifeexperiment.com and sign up for the goodies.
All up in it. And until next time, go forth and unfuck yourself.
Yay. Insert didgeridoo?
Insert didgeridoo!